All right. Greetings, everybody. Chuck Holton here, coming to you live from my studio in Panama. Just got home late last night, about midnight, and got a little bit of sleep. Still kind of jet lagging a little bit, not too bad. We had an amazing 3 weeks in Armenia and Ukraine, and now back here for a couple of weeks, and then we'll be up in the States over Christmas. I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving yesterday. We spent our Thanksgiving flying home, but it was a much faster flight than it normally is, and that was really good. So make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, do me a favor and post where you're watching from in the chat. I'd like to see that. And before we get to the topic of the day, I do need to talk about just some breaking news that's just now coming out. This is Sarah. This is the National Guard's uh, one of the two National Guard's uh, people who were shot. Her name is Sarah Beckstrom. She has died. She was shot in the head. She was the first one shot. The other guy that was shot, both from the West Virginia National Guard in Washington D.C. He is still clinging to life. He got shot about 5 times, I think, before the attacker was taken out by a major who did not have a firearm for some weird reason, but he used his pocket knife to stab uh, the attacker in the face or something and kind of take him out. The attacker was then subsequently shot by another guy a couple times, and he's expected to survive, of course. So very sad for Sarah Beckstrom and her family from West Virginia, and that just is so sad. I mean, this is the kind of thing that I have been predicting. I hate to say for several years, because when we started bringing all these Afghans over from from Afghanistan after the collapse of the U.S. presence there under Joe Biden in 2021, I kept saying, why are we bringing all these people over? We don't need to bring these people over. And a lot of people disagreed with me on that. And they said, well, these people have been helping us for years. This attacker, this Afghan guy, 29 years old, had been working for more than 10 years with U.S. military in Afghanistan. And so the excuse was, we need to give them the ability to come to the United States and live here because they've been helping us in Afghanistan for all this time. And I've been saying, no, they weren't helping us. They were helping, we were helping them. It was their country. And we were there trying to make their country a place that was worth living in. So they should be grateful. And that doesn't just ipso facto give them a right to come live in the United States. Okay, so all of that, if you want to see more about that, I did a short video about that yesterday I guess it was yesterday, uh, from uh, Frankfurt, I guess, is where I was. And boy, it was long travel day, 27-hour travel day. And we left on the 27th and got back on the 27th, even though we traveled 27 hours. So it's one of those kind of days. So before we get into the topic of the day of what happened in Syria, all of this uncertainty is making the markets a little spooked, and they've been pretty volatile over the last couple of days. Folks, if you have a retirement plan and you're close to retirement age, 65, getting close to 65 or past that, you really should be thinking about taking some of your assets and storing it in gold. Because gold not only is a store of value and it's sort of inflation proof, but it also has done pretty well over the last 5 years. It's outperformed the S&P 500, especially recently. Preserve Gold, my friends over there, they will help you invest in physical gold and silver. This is you don't want to be investing in uh, derivatives or futures or something like that. uh, investing in physical gold and silver is the best way to do it. It's the safest way to do it. And you can put physical gold and silver into your retirement plan. So I know some of you have heard me talk about this before, but if you're new to the channel, investing in gold is a great way to beef up your retirement savings. And you can have it delivered right to your home. If it's going to be part of your 401k or your IRA, you can't do that. You have to put it into a um, kind of a vault somewhere, and they will help you do that. The people at Preserve Gold are great. I've worked with them on the phone, and they're very friendly, very helpful. They'll explain everything to you. You can get everything you need by texting Chuck to the word Chuck to 50505, and they will send you a free wealth protection guide, help you understand how to invest in gold, why it's important to invest in physical gold and silver. And so if you want that free wealth protection guide, go to preservegold.com/Chuck-Holton, or like I say, just text the word Chuck to 50505 and they will take care of you. So thank you to Preserve Gold for sponsoring today's podcast. So let's talk about what happened in Syria. This has been kind of interesting here. Let's see. Early morning this morning over in kind of western Syria, southwestern Syria, Israeli forces carried out a raid on a town called Beit Jin. Now I have a map here and I can show you Beit Jin on the map. If we pull this up, this is the what it looks like. According to the military of Israel, the raid targeted members of a terror group known as Jama'a al-Islamiya, also known as the Islamic group of Lebanon and Syria. Two members were arrested. We'll zoom out here and you can see that this is actually a pretty small town. And if we go over to just a simpler version, what you can see here is down here. I mean, this is deep inside Syria. So you see the demilitarized zone clear over here, right over here. This line is the de facto border between Israel and Syria. Israel has now pushed into Syria up to this line right here. It goes down around Quneitra and all that. And so this village where they did this raid was quite a bit deeper into Syria from even the area that they already control. So I'm sorry, this is the line that that they've pushed up to. I got those backwards. Okay, so this is the border, goes right down near Quneitra. This is the new area that they're controlling, and you can see it's closer to Damascus here. So there's a very interesting article out in Israel Hayom today about the all-female intelligence unit that is gathering intelligence in Syria by going into Syrian territory and flying drones, small surveillance drones, very low and slow over some of these villages. And they're flying them low enough that they can actually capture faces, get facial recognition, figure out who's who. They've found some Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps guys from this intelligence unit that they've been able to take out. So they're the driving force behind a lot of what's going on in Syria right now with Israel. This all-female intel unit is doing a great job, apparently, of setting up traps. So not only gathering intel on who's who and where they are and what they're doing, but then working to draw them together in a place where there are not a lot of civilians so that they can drop a bomb on them. And they've been pretty good at doing that recently. So we have some footage of the uh, the raid as it went down. This is provided by the IDF. This is using night vision. Now, the raid kind of went sideways. It did not go as planned, unfortunately. They captured two members of this terror group. Let's see, we'll go back to that. Let's turn that down. So this thing went sideways because they got into a firefight as they were pulling out. I guess they lost one vehicle. They had one Humvee that was burned. And you can see them fighting. You can hear the gunfire here as they're having a firefight. There were 7 IDF soldiers that were wounded in this exchange. So that's a pretty significant. You can hear these guys. They're pulling out, they're driving away. So pretty serious stuff, obviously. So what the raid met armed resistance. Local gunmen, some sources say, engaged the Israeli troops as they were pulling out. By Syrian reporting, at least 13 Syrians were killed in the firefight that resulted. Among the casualties, the Syrian officials claim there were some civilians that were killed as well. But the IDF says they were returning fire on militants that shot at them. Again, 7 IDF troops injured. I think 4 of them are in serious condition. 2 of them are in moderate condition. 2 of them are in light condition or something like that. Or one was in light condition. Serious condition is not necessarily circling the drain, but they were hurt very badly, and they're going to need some serious time in the hospital to recover. It sounds like everybody should recover. They haven't announced any deaths from this. So the operation concluded with the arrest of the stated targets, and the Israelis say that they also eliminated 2 other terrorists that were in the area. But it was pretty costly for Israel with this particular raid. The IDF says that this was a success. That they accomplished their objective for the mission. They don't usually they wouldn't call it a failure just because they had some guys wounded, but obviously nobody likes to see that. So I wanted to just pull this quote up, or this comment that somebody made before the live started. I've since put this guy in timeout, but he said, I've said before, Israel isn't on our team. Be careful, Patriot. The second in command at the Pentagon is really in charge. He's a Zionist. Well, I'm a Zionist. A Zionist is just somebody who believes that Israel has a right to exist. And so there are a lot of people who are trying to use that word as a pejorative. I don't think it's a pejorative at all. I think saying that you're a Zionist means that people that of Jewish descent who were, originally from that region should have their own country. They should be able to do that. There are more than 20 Muslim countries across that region, and there's only one Jewish country. And Israel is the freest, safest, most representative government in the whole region by an order of magnitude. So to say Israel is not on our team is just ignorant. It is absolutely ignorant, because Israel shares lots of intelligence with the United States, and that's very valuable intel on our part. The technological trading back and forth that we do with Israel is worth about $43 billion a year to the United States. So I don't know how you can say they're not on our team. They love Americans. They love President Trump, and it's absolutely ignorant to say otherwise. And so I just wanted to get that one off the plate and answer it. Uh, Somebody else is asking, what do I think of TBN Israel's news reporting? I like TBN. I like Yair Pinto. I've met him several times. We're friends. I talk to him on the phone once in a while, and I go visit him when I'm in Israel. Uh, they do a great job. They do a really good job of reporting on news of interest to people like us who care about Israel. So that's how I think about that. Okay, so now, apparently, I'm just going through what we know about what happened on this raid into Syria. This is not the first time that the Israelis have done this. They say they've made it very clear that they're going to continue to do raids like this and are not going to back down from Syria. Why? Well, because there are some serious threats to Israel coming out of Syria. The organization that these guys belong to they just arrested. Again, the name is al-Jama'a al-Islamiya. It's actually a terror group out of Lebanon. And the fact that they were arrested in this little village in Syria is quite concerning because that means that these guys are establishing a presence in Syria. We've had intelligence reports coming out in the recent past, I'm talking in the last week or two, saying that there was a serious threat being picked up, some chatter out of Syria of a potential attempted incursion attack on Israeli territory out of Syria by some of these Islamic groups. Now, this particular Islamic group, even though they're based in Lebanon, they're a Sunni group. They're not like Hezbollah, which is Shia. They are backed by the Muslim Brotherhood, yes, and they're essentially an arm of Hamas, or they're very closely ideologically related to Hamas. And as I have pointed out many times, Hamas doesn't just exist in Gaza. They exist in Jordan, in Syria, in Lebanon, and elsewhere, in Turkey, of course, Qatar. So Israel defeating Hamas in Gaza is just a good first step, but they are going to have to continue fighting Hamas in Judea and Samaria, within Israel, in Hebron, and again in Syria and Lebanon. So they certainly, somebody says, Millicent Bullock says, they do have the right to exist, but they do not have the right to eliminate a population. Well, they haven't eliminated a population. They haven't even tried to eliminate a population. The whole Gaza genocide trope is pretty tired. It's pretty ridiculous because there are more people today in Gaza than there were at the beginning of the war. Israel, if they wanted to exterminate the Gazans, they could have done so in an afternoon. I mean, they have the ability to genocide the Gazans if they want to. And so obviously they don't want to because they're currently allowing 800 truckloads of aid into Gaza every day. They've been providing medical care for people in Gaza for many years. They've provided vaccinations for the children of Gaza. They have allowed electricity and communications and water to flow into Gaza, and not just allowed it, but actually provided it. How can you say Israel is trying to genocide a population that they are literally feeding, watering, caring for medically, and allowing to breed unchecked in that space? It's look, words mean things, right? And so for you to use that term genocide or extermination, saying that they're trying to exterminate a population, you are being disingenuous. And that's just a nicer term for lying. You're lying because Israel is not trying to exterminate a population. Uh, there are lots of civilians, I mean, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who live in Israel. Did you know that? Not just in Gaza, but who live in East Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and Hebron. And Israel's not exterminating those people. 60% of Jordan is Palestinian. Israel hasn't dropped one bomb on those people ever. They're friends with Jordan. So you see how ridiculous that statement actually is. So this Isaac Mendoza says Israel's the worst nation committing genocide. They're not. So I'm done talking about that because you're just lying. You are lying for political purposes. And so if you're talking like that, you're going to get booted from the live. So please boot whoever that Isaac person was. Um, okay, so let me just move on. We'll get to the questions at the end. If you have questions, put them in. You know, put them in all caps, and then make it easier for our moderators to pick them up and star them for me so that I can go back to them at the end. I also wanted to say thank you to PC uh, for that 19 pounds 99. Really appreciate you. Looking forward to meeting you face to face in our Armenia trip. I believe you're coming over for that. One other thing I wanted to mention, folks, is we do have a tour going to Panama in April. If you're interested in joining us, you can send an email to info@holtonnews.com. Info@holtonnews.com. Maybe so I can put it up there on Nathan can put it up on the screen for you. And we'll send you all the information about how to join my wife and I on a 5-day adventure to Panama. It's not super expensive. It's not super arduous like some of our tours have been. It is going to be relaxing, beautiful, and we're going to have a good time together, kind of exploring Panama. So if you ever thought about maybe retiring overseas, being an expat, if you wondered what that is like, this will be a great time for us to answer those kind of questions. So get signed up there. It's I forget the exact dates in April, but we can get all that information to you if you just go to send an email to info@holtonnews.com. Amy will get you what you need on that. Okay. Um, in the aftermath of this raid in Syria, Israel used air support to drop bombs on to airstrike various places around that little town. You can imagine, that certainly was a challenge. Israel doesn't drop bombs randomly. They only hit places that they know are military related, that they know need to be hit. And in this case, they were assisting, I believe, their troops as their troops were trying to withdraw from the area. And so they concluded that the raid overall was a success. Obviously, nobody wants to get their troops injured, but these guys were from the 3rd Alexandroni Brigade under the 210th Division, and that's the unit responsible for operations on the Syrian front. Uh, okay, so the official reasoning Israel gave for that raid is that these militants were establishing a presence out of Lebanon in Syria with the specific intention of attacking Israel. They are known to have taken part in June, I believe. I think it was June of this year. There was a rocket attack out of Syria, and they believe it was the same group that was involved in that rocket attack. So obviously, they have the ability to do so. Again, this is a Sunni group, not affiliated with Hezbollah, but they probably would work with Hezbollah if there was a compelling reason to do so. Turning over to Hezbollah, Israel has kind of given an ultimatum through Israel Katz, their defense minister. gave an ultimatum to the government of Lebanon and said, if you don't disarm Hezbollah south of the Litani River, at least by the end of this year, we will come into Lebanon again with a ground invasion to do it for you. This goes along with the sort of ultimatum that the United States has given to the Lebanese army that they need to disarm Hezbollah by the end of this year. That got kind of walked back a little bit because the Lebanese army came out and said we estimate it would take us 15 months to fully disarm Hezbollah. When that just tells you how much stuff Hezbollah still has in Lebanon. They still have thousands of missiles and rockets and drones. They still have a lot of explosives and weapons and ammunition. And they still have a lot of infrastructure in terms of tunnels and headquarters buildings or underground headquarters and all sorts of things like that. So that's why you see Israel continuing to strike Lebanon almost every day with airstrikes and that sort of thing. And they are continuing to fly drones and other, signals intelligence gathering platforms over not just Lebanon, but Syria as well, to gather as much information as they can. They have very, very good ground intelligence out of Lebanon, and they're working on getting better ground intelligence out of Syria too. All that intelligence gives them the information that they need in order to strike at known Hezbollah targets and Hamas targets uh, in those two countries. Okay. So now I wanted to go over to, I'm just keeping an eye on the time here. Wanted to go over to an interesting video, a couple of interesting videos from Javier Milei, the president of Argentina. Now, he gave a speech and talked about a lot of different things. And I hope I can get these in the right order, but it had a lot to do with Israel and his support for Israel and his explanations of why we should support Israel. And I just want you to listen to these things in their entirety or these quotes that I pulled out. I translated them into English for you. It's also subtitled there, so you don't have to speak Spanish. But he gave a just very powerful moral explanation of why we should support Israel. And I hope that we've still got some of these people on here that are like, Israel's committing genocide, because they're not. Because I want you to listen to this. And if you can poke holes in this, you got a real moral dilemma on your hands. You got a real problem. And so take a listen.
Israel is a prime example of all these values that made the West great because because its foundation was little more than a desert, and in just almost 80 years, it was transformed thanks to the tireless work of its citizens into an oasis of prosperity and growth. Therefore, supporting Israel is crucial for our country because it signifies upholding the very values that 100 years ago made us a great nation, but which we subsequently abandoned. And by abandoning them, we sank into utter misery. It is for this reason that today more than ever, we must redouble our unwavering commitment to what is good and true, both inside and outside our nation. Today more than ever is our moral duty to defend these Judeo-Christian values. Because without a doubt, in his unwavering commitment to what is good, regardless of any criticism, he shows the world that today we are a much better country. And this is also something truly necessary to make Argentina great once again. Thank you all very much for your kind attention. May God bless you, and may...
So this is him just saying Israel has done amazing things in its journey as a nation, and it needs to be supported. It deserves to be supported. He went on that was kind of the end of the speech, but he went on to explain a little further why it's a moral imperative to support Israel.
The vast majority of the free world chose to turn its back on the Jewish state, we extended our hand. While the vast majority turned a deaf ear to the rise of anti-Semitism in their lands, we denounced it with greater fervor, because evil cannot be met with indifference, but must be confronted with a force of equal magnitude, but opposite in direction.
If the force were to be strong enough, then
In the end, if the forces of good don't undertake that struggle, all is lost. And this is so, especially when it's hard, when everyone tells you not to, when all are silent from fear or cowardice, because the moment a man, a government, or a country stops doing what's right because it's unpopular is the moment it begins to die. Let it be very clear, to sacrifice what is good, to embrace comfort, is a condemnation to failure. Indifference to evil is being part of evil.
Indifference to evil is being a part of evil. That is so powerful. And it's good words to live by in our daily lives. This is why I've always said that whenever you look at a conflict going on planet Earth, there are always two sides to it. There's always information warfare that's going around and trying to influence your opinion about the conflict one way or the other. And it's very important to try to look at it from a moral standpoint first, and not a political standpoint, not an economic standpoint, not even a geopolitical standpoint, but look at it from the moral standpoint first. And there are far too many people who condemn Israel for defending itself in Judea and Samaria and Hebron and Gaza, areas of Israel that it's defending itself in, and they completely ignore the reason why Israel is in Gaza in the first place. You realize Israel wasn't in Gaza on October 6th. There was no Israel in Gaza on October 6th. And what I want to ask some of these people who say that Israel's committing a genocide in Gaza, which is just so provably wrong. But what I want to ask them is, what should Israel have done after October 7th? Should they have just rolled over and just let the Palestinians come in and kill their people and not responded at all? What should they have done? What would you have wanted your government to do if that happened in your country? You see, there's a real moral hazard here if you ignore the catalyst that caused the war to start in the first place, and then just try to condemn one side, the victim, for defending itself against an organization that truly is genocidal, that claims, that boasts about being genocidal. The Israelis have never said we're going to wipe out the Palestinians off the face of the earth. They've never, ever, ever said that. But the Palestinians say that about the Israelis every single day. And so if you're criticizing Israel, you're saying Israel's a bad nation, and you're ignoring the fact that the people that they're fighting literally are committed to their total destruction. Well, you've got a moral dilemma on your hands. You're being intellectually dishonest, and it's immoral. Israel is not the issue. Okay. Now, last but not least, I just love Javier Milei. I love the way he speaks. He's well spoken. I wish that we had leaders in America that could speak morally like this. Could address the ethics of a problem with such force. Unfortunately, we really don't. Our leadership is really more transactional and just based on how can we make the most money for America, and not really think about what's the moral component. And that bothers me about President Trump and his administration. But so take a listen to this last quote from Milei. I just think this is so good. Doesn't talk about Israel, but it's really worth listening to.
The world today is not what it was a few years back. October 7 marked a before and an after, not just for Israel or for Jewish people, but for the entire Western world. On October 7th, Mopo, we all were able to witness the very face of evil. We saw how an entire society committed, filmed, and proudly shared with the rest of the planet the most aberrant crimes in recent memory. And it's truly difficult to imagine for those who didn't witness the events, the sheer magnitude of the horror of this terrorist attack. It was a traumatic event, an event that reminded us all that Israel is not fighting a reasonable adversary, but an enemy with genocidal will and capability, an enemy that spares no children, elderly, or women in its insatiable thirst to impose a criminal ideology. It is quite simply a truly evil enemy.
So that wasn't the quote I was looking for, but that speaks very strongly to what I was just talking about. He explains very clearly the moral issue here is that Israel is facing a genocidal enemy that wants to destroy the entire country of Israel and murder every Jew anywhere in the world. If you can't see the evil in that, I don't know what to tell you, but you certainly don't belong here. So you should just move on and go watch some music videos or something because your depraved mind won't let you see evil for what it truly is. Okay. Now we're at 36 minutes, so I want to get to our questions here, and we'll go with this first one. Whoop. Okay, there we go. As I've said before, Israel. Okay, I already got that one. That's that jack wagon. The aren't you pointing to the 49th armistice line? I think the first time I did, Daddy Lung Lung. Okay, what do you think? DHS saying Burma is safe now. Uh, there's still a lot of fighting going on in Burma. I may go to Burma this coming year. I typically try to do a mission with Free Burma Rangers at least once a year, but it depends on what's going on in the world, whether that mission takes place in Syria, Ukraine, Burma, or somewhere else. So we'll have to wait and see. But I wouldn't say Burma is a place you'd want to go on vacation. Uh, uh, just from my understanding, I hear from the guys that are in Burma on an almost daily basis, and there's still a lot of bad stuff happening over there. Maybe not all across the country, but certainly in the areas where there's fighting, you wouldn't want to go up there. Patrick Wickersham says, with all the terrorists to the north and east of Israel, does Turkey give you concern to the south? Well, Turkey is not south of Israel. They're north of Israel. And there we go. Let's go look at the map here. Okay. Here's our map. Okay. There's Israel. Here's Syria. And here's Turkey up here. Okay. So do they give me concern? Well, I think you should believe it when people say they're planning to hurt you. Turkey has, their president, Erdogan, has threatened Israel many times. And I don't think he would make good on those threats simply because as a member of NATO, the United States still has enough leverage over Turkey to keep them out of this fight. Several times during the war, Turkey has threatened to send troops to attack Israel directly, and Israel, I don't think would back down from that fight. That would put the United States in a very difficult position because, again, Turkey is a NATO ally. They shouldn't be, but they still are. So I'm not too concerned about Turkey, to answer your question. Ori says, is the UN going to be responsible to the logistics of the peacekeeping force in Gaza? Are they going to pay for all the food, electricity, et cetera, the soldier stationed in the Strip? So there won't be soldiers stationed in the Gaza Strip. The peacekeeping forces that they're talking about are Well, right now they're not even sure that's even going to happen because nobody has volunteered to send their troops into Gaza except the Palestinian Authority. And Israel says we're not going to allow the Palestinian Authority to run Gaza. That's just, putting the fox in charge of the henhouse. That's replacing one enemy with another. Turkey has said they would send their troops into Gaza, which Israel says not going to happen. I think Indonesia also said that they would consider it, and Israel said, nope, not going to allow Indonesia to do that either. What they're concerned about is they don't want a country that is known to be an extremist Islamic country like Turkey, like Indonesia, et cetera, to send troops into Gaza because they're obviously going to be on the side of Hamas. They're not going to do their job as they should. So Israel's like, we'd rather just stay there and do it ourselves if we have to, rather than let Turkey or one of these countries come in and do it. And that is causing some consternation with the United States because President Trump really wants to make this happen. He really wants to see this peace plan take place. And as I said, they will be living just outside the Gaza Strip. Actually, I saw the bid or the request for bids that went out for the military base that they want to build for these 10,000 peacekeepers. And it would be just outside of Gaza on Israeli land. And then they would run patrols and everything base out of there. Be much, much safer. Of course, much easier logistically to provide them with food and water and shelter and all that stuff. But the real question is it going to happen at all? They are the peace deal in Gaza is kind of in shambles at this point. There have been tons of times where Hamas has violated the ceasefire agreement by shooting at IDF troops. As a matter of fact, there was an IDF soldier that was wounded in Gaza yesterday in a confrontation with Hamas. They took out. They saw. I think it was 6 or 8 Hamas terrorists that emerged from a tunnel inside the yellow zone and were eliminated by an airstrike. I think maybe 2 of them might have escaped or survived somehow, but most of them were eliminated. And one other thing that's going on in as Israel is continuing to try to mop up in Gaza, I want to show you this tunnel network right here because this is insane. This is in Rafah, okay? And the pink network there is a 7-kilometer network of tunnels under the city of Rafah. It went more than 60 feet deep. And there was an interesting post on X where somebody said, I asked, let's see if I have, I think I still have that here. Let me see here. Where did that go? I don't see it. Anyway, this post on X said, oh, I swore I had that up there. This guy said, I asked Grok what the cost of this tunnel network was and what it would have, what that amount of money would have provided if it had been used to help the people of Gaza and not to build this tunnel network, which is just meant to harm Israel. They know for a fact that some of the hostages were held in these tunnels, and in the process of dismantling them and destroying them now. But the estimation is that the amount of man hours was more than 250,000 days of work to build just this one tunnel complex under a refugee camp in southern Gaza in Rafah. With 250,000 man days of labor and the money that it cost to build these tunnels, they could have built 3 hospitals. They could have built another power generation plant that would have provided power for all of Gaza. They could have built several desalination plants that would have provided more than enough fresh water for everyone in Gaza. They could have provided housing for thousands of people. And so they could have addressed pretty much all of the things that the Gazans always point to say that they're living in an open air concentration camp, that, you know, we don't have enough water, we don't have enough electricity, we don't have enough hospitals, we don't have enough housing. They could have addressed all of that with just the amount of money that they spent on these tunnels. And that's just mind boggling to me. I mean, it's something to keep in mind here. Okay. All right, let's see. Go back to our questions here. Uh, let's see here. What's happening with Ukraine and Russia? Uh, have not heard much. Was there a truce? All quiet. Well, you haven't been watching the show last week because I was in Ukraine last week, reporting live from Ukraine for a week. So I would just suggest you go back and watch some of my more recent live broadcasts you can find here on the YouTube channel, because I explained everything that's going on in Ukraine. I'll talk more about Ukraine, but that's not the topic for today. So we'll just let that go. Okay, next. Did you hear the Israeli spy that said Israel threatened the U.S. with nuclear weapons? No, I didn't hear that. That sounds like propaganda to me. Think about it. I mean, just use your brain for a minute. Do you really think it would be in Israel's best interests to threaten the United States with a nuke? I mean, really? They get $3 billion a year from the United States in the form of military assistance and aid, that sort of thing. Do you think they would? Is there any reason for them to do that? That just doesn't make any sense at all. So when you see something like that, this is where critical thinking skills come in, folks. You need to, look critically at that and go, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense at all. So there are obviously, you can find somebody to say anything you want, and some expert, or whatever. And Tucker Carlson does this all the time. He goes and finds some random guy and has him say whatever it is that Russia wants Tucker Carlson to talk about. But just like we saw in Armenia when I was there, Tucker Carlson was had some Armenian guy on talking about how the government of Armenia is cracking down on the Armenian Apostolic Church. I went and spoke to leaders from the Armenian Apostolic Church and other Christian leaders and government leaders across Armenia over the last couple of weeks. And there is no persecution of the church. There's none. I mean, so again, just propaganda. All it takes is just a little bit of digging, a little bit of critical thinking skills, and you won't fall prey to propaganda like that. Next, Nathan. Can you get Steve, the tour guide of racist boots on the ground brother in Israel, with a wealth of information? I'm a Zionist. I follow him, the tour guide. As a matter of fact, I even donate to him because he does put out some really good stuff, and I'd love to get him on. If you have his contact info, if you have some way that I could contact him, definitely send it, please. Pookie Martinez. I said Pookie Martinez, but you guys just come up with names to make me sound foolish, don't you? Yeah, I'd love to get a hold of him, and I would love to have him on the show. So please, if anybody has his contact info, go ahead and send it. Okay, next. Off subject, what do you think about Paul Warburg? I like Paul a lot. As a matter of fact, I watch almost all of his videos. Paul pretty much only talks about the Ukraine-Russia war, but he is a good geopolitical analyst and makes good videos, and so I recommend his stuff for sure. Is the U.S. bombing Venezuela? Not as of a half hour ago. They weren't. So unless they started just a few minutes ago, I don't believe they are bombing Venezuela. And I really am starting to think that President Trump is not going to bomb Venezuela. I went to Trinidad a couple weeks ago, 3-4 weeks ago, something now. because they were saying that it was going to happen in the next 24 to 48 hours, and I wanted to be there when it happened. Well, we've been building up forces and building up forces and building up forces, trying to put pressure on Maduro. Maduro literally was on TV begging President Trump to not, like, let's work together to get rid of the drugs. We'll work with you. Please don't attack, because Maduro is trying to, maintain his grip on power. Now, I do have a video of President Trump. Where'd that go? Talking about Venezuela, and he seems to be threatening that there will be strikes on Venezuela sometime soon. But as we all know, President Trump just says stuff and doesn't typically follow up on them. Ask the people in Greenland, or the Greenland was supposed to be part of America. Canada was supposed to be a part of America. Panama was supposed to be taken over by America. None of that stuff has happened. The war in Ukraine did not end in 24 hours. I could go on and on and on and on and on. Just all the examples of how President Trump just spouts off and doesn't think really much about what he's saying. So you have to, I mean, it's unfortunate. I would love to see him back himself up just once, just really back himself up, instead of, doing this thing where he throws something out there that's patently ridiculous and then walks it back. That's his strategy. That's his tactic. That's how he, would buy a building in New York. It's a $1 million building. He'd say, I'll give you $100,000. That's not worth $1 million. And, then he might end up buying the building for 600,000 instead of 700,000, because he started at such a low number. So he got used to bargaining that way. The problem is it doesn't really work in geopolitics. If you say you're going to do something, you better do it. And I mean, honestly, I hope President Trump strikes Venezuela, just because he keeps saying he's going to do it. And I hate to see him, being labeled with the taco moniker, Trump always chickens out. I hate that. So here's what he had to say.
We've been working to deter Venezuelan drug traffickers, of which there are many. Of course, there aren't too many coming in by sea anymore, have you probably noticed that? From sending their poisons into the United States, where they kill hundreds of thousands of people a year. But we're going to take care of that situation. We're already doing a lot. We've almost stopped. It's about 85% stopped by sea. You probably noticed that. People aren't wanting to be delivering by sea. And we'll be starting to stop them by land also. The land is easier, but that's going to start very soon. We warn them, stop sending poison to our country.
So he says the land is easier. That's easily easy to debunk. It's certainly not easier to stop the drugs that are coming by land. Now, drugs coming up from from South America, if they're coming by land, are going to have to go through the Darien Gap, and they would be easier to stop in the Darien Gap. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on that. Maybe that's what he was talking about. But otherwise, you can put drugs in a civilian vehicle, and it's going to be really hard to tell from the sky if that civilian vehicle is carrying drugs. On the other hand, if you see a boat filled with white packages that's got 5 outboard motors on it, traveling at a high rate of speed going north, that's probably not a fishing boat. And so it's pretty easy to tell that those guys are up to no good. And so it's much easier to tell by sea. Nevertheless, he says we're going to be stopping them by land very shortly. I don't know what he's waiting on, but let's hope that they do. Let's hope they. I mean, I am not averse at all to dropping warheads on drug facilities, drug manufacturing facilities in Venezuela or Colombia or anywhere else. I think we should be totally about that, but we'll just have to wait and see if that happens. So do you think Turkey should be kicked out of NATO? Yes, but they probably won't be. There are enough countries in NATO that would keep them, but right now Turkey is not our friend, and kicking them out of NATO would just make them more of an adversary than they already are, and it would remove some of the leverage that we have over them, and it would put some of our nuclear weapons in grave danger, because we still have nukes in Turkey at Incirlik Air Base, and we can't just smuggle those out in a suitcase. Those are those nukes are the size of a Suburban or bigger, and I think there's like 7 or 8 of them there. If Turkey saw that we were trying to move them out of there, they would very likely try to stop us, and that could get ugly real fast. So unfortunately, we kind of have to play the game with Turkey, and we maintain a little more leverage over them by keeping them in NATO than we do by having them out of NATO. Okay, if Turkey's soldiers go to Gaza, they will be in the south. Therefore, Israel will be surrounded. Well, okay, I see what you're saying there. Israel is not going to allow Turkish soldiers in Gaza. End of story. That's a red line for Israel, so we don't have to worry about that. Okay. Sorry. Arnold says, I don't understand how they could have countries running Gaza that are against Israel. It would be replacing evil with evil. Of course, that's a rhetorical question, but my sentiments exactly. Rusty Spiker says, what do you believe is the citizens' role to fight Islam in U.S. cities? They have made no bones about what their intent is. Thank you. Number one, vote. And vote, not just vote for your governor or your president, but vote for your city council and maybe run for city council. What we need are more local level initiatives to blunt the advance of Islam in America. Up in Dearborn, Michigan, for example, and in New York, you're going to have this happening. Mosques blaring out the call to prayer 5 times a day, including at 4 o'clock in the morning, over loudspeakers. That shouldn't happen in America. Because you understand that when Muslims put out the call to prayer like that, they believe that any place within hearing, within earshot of that call to prayer is and will always forever in eternity be Muslim conquered land. And so as mosques proliferate across America, we don't want to get to a place. I don't want to get to a place where I've got to listen to that call to prayer 5 times a day, especially at 4 o'clock in the morning. So we need to be voting against things like that, voting for ordinances that ban the call to prayer. Like you can shout the call to prayer if that's part of your religious experience, great. You can shout from the top of your minaret if you like, but you can't use any electronic means to amplify your voice. That should be the rule. Okay, Darth Vader, new member. Thank you for being a member. I appreciate that. Folks, you can become a member on YouTube and actually support us through YouTube via the super chat, super thanks. You can become a paying supporter on YouTube, but it's better to go over to chuckholton.com and become a supporter over there. I'm glad we've got hundreds of members on YouTube, and that's great if that's the way you want to do it. Nothing against that, but we get more of your support when you support us over on locals because they don't take as much of a cut. So locals is the way we try to future-proof the broadcast away from YouTube. I could have 5,000 paying supporters on YouTube. I'd say one thing wrong and YouTube cancels my account and we lose everything. So that's why we're trying to diversify and get people to go over to chuckholton.com and become supporters over there. If you like this kind of live interactive broadcast where you can ask me questions and make stupid comments and watch my hair catch on fire, then please support us over on locals and that'll keep us going. All right. So next question. It's Israel's land. Why can't they, Arnold says, why can't they run it and the people there follow Israel's laws or leave? Well, that's kind of one of the reasons why Israel has talked about extending sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. Right now, Judea and Samaria are governed under basically martial law, different rules than the rest of Israel. And they've talked in recent months about claiming and sovereignty over all of Judea and Samaria. Look, as far as I'm concerned, Judea and Samaria and Hebron belong to Israel. That is Israeli land. Judea. I mean, how much more plain can you make it? Judea, right? That's the reason that's where the Jews came from. So it is Israeli land as far as I'm concerned, but right now it's just governed a little differently, and it would be nice if they could just standardize it. That creates its own thorny issues in terms of offering citizenship for the Palestinians and all that kind of stuff too. So there are some reasons why they haven't done it so far. Okay, next. How did they get away building those tunnels and not be noticed? They were noticed. Everybody knew they were building the tunnels. I was there, oh gosh, in 2017, and went to the border of Gaza with binoculars and looked across, and you could see dump trucks full of earth being dumped outside the tunnel entrances as they were pulling stuff out. And the Israelis said, yeah, they're using almost all the concrete that's being made in Gaza is going into those tunnels and not building, improved buildings for the people. So they knew it was happening. And I guess they just allowed it to happen. They're like, well, if they just want to dig holes in the ground, we'll let them do that as long as they're not coming into Israel. That's better than the alternative. But maybe they should have been bombing those at the outset, and it would have made it a lot easier. Some of those tunnels, for a time, they kept finding tunnels that were going under the border into Israel proper. And there were even some instances where people popped out of tunnels in Israel, murdered families asleep in their beds, including little children, and then hightailed it back into Gaza through the tunnels. And so when I was there in 2017, I saw they had these vehicles with the big sets of drills, like 15 drills on the front of the vehicles that would drill down into the earth and look for tunnels. And then if they found them, they would just dump concrete in there and fill the tunnel full of concrete. And so it's a continuing problem. And I guess it's going to go on as long as there are Palestinians in Gaza. All right, next. Your thoughts on Trump's State Department team needs to be overhauled and replaced with seasoned diplomats and negotiators. Well, sending Steve Witkoff turns out is a very, very bad idea. Witkoff is compromised by Russia. There's no two ways about it. So they've got a good diplomat in the State Department. It's the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and he would do a fantastic job with some of these negotiations. I just don't understand why President Trump keeps sending a real estate developer with no diplomatic experience into these negotiations instead of the Secretary of State. I don't think Trump trusts Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and that tells you Trump is tainted himself, because Marco Rubio has a very solid head on his shoulders, a very good understanding of geopolitics around the world, especially in Latin America, and he's just being sidelined, probably because he doesn't agree on a lot of the stuff that Steve Witkoff is coming back and regurgitating into Trump's ears about what's going on in Israel and in Ukraine and Russia. So it's unfortunate. They do need to replace Witkoff, but they don't need to get new people. They just need to let the Secretary of State do his job, and things would go a lot better, I think. Thank you, Diva. I appreciate that. I'm just trying to put this up here. Nathan. I appreciate the $9.99. Thank you for that. Okay, Nathan, next question. Why is Trump administration focused on Burma, which is minorities in states, and not like China or Vietnamese, which are not Christian? Why is Trump? I don't know that they're that focused on Burma. As you know, I've got a lot of ties to Burma. I've been to Burma many times with the Free Burma Rangers. And the Trump administration has not done much to make that situation better. Burma has a ton of Christians in it. Adoniram Judson, the first Southern Baptist missionary, went to Burma and converted the hill tribes in Burma almost en masse to Christianity years ago, more than 100 years ago. Uh, so what happens in Burma is very much driven by China. Uh, so we should be focusing on Burma more than we are. You yourselves, I mean, my viewers could care less about Burma. When I went to Burma and was making broadcasts from there, sending out videos every day while I was there, we got like no viewers. People just don't care. It's sad, but unfortunately, the war in Israel is what people are really interested in, and so I'm trying to give you what you want. If you don't want to hear about Burma, then I'm not going to spend a lot of time reporting on it. Just like I don't spend a lot of time reporting on what's going on in Africa. Just go look at the number of views that we got the other day when I reported on a really interesting story about American Special Forces troops in Somalia doing a raid on an encampment, having a huge firefight with more than 150 bad guys, ISIS affiliated bad guys in Somalia, taking them out, and how we not only are paying for the military and what they're doing, of course, but we were also paying for those bad guys in Somalia to do what they were doing through fraud that was taking place in Minneapolis. And I connected those two together and did a lot of research on that. Took a lot of time. Took me an entire day to put that whole thing together, and nobody looked at it. Nobody cares. It's just like, this got very few views, and I don't understand. But look, if you really want to understand what's going on in the world, I can talk about lots of different conflicts. We don't have to just spend all our time on Israel, but unfortunately, you guys vote with your feet and let me know that you don't really want to hear about Ukraine or you don't really want to hear about anything else. And so I'm trying to give you what you want. All right. Next, is the oceanfront property in Gaza going to have a casino? Probably not. Next, apparently Zelensky's office is being raided for evidence of corruption. From what I understand, again, having just been there, talking to some people that are close to Zelensky's inner circle, I met with the head of the Special Operations Forces in Ukraine while I was there, had dinner with him, and met with some people who are literally in Zelensky's inner circle. And what they're saying is this isn't touching the government so much as it is former associates of Zelensky, business associates who have been caught red-handed skimming money off of the power grid, money that's supposed to go to supporting the power grid and helping to beef it up in the face of the attacks by Russia. It hasn't touched Zelensky personally. Zelensky himself has ordered the arrest of his former business associates, and 6 of the 8 have been arrested. The other 2 fled the country. So if you're watching the media is trying very hard to tie Zelensky to this and kind of implicate Zelensky in this. But from talking to people who know, it seems like what they're telling me is that Zelensky is not implicated in this. It's just that people who knew Zelensky or had business dealings with him at some point are the ones who are, getting arrested for this corruption. And if Zelensky's arresting the people that are charged with this corruption, I'd say he's doing the right thing, right? Okay, so next, why is Trump administration focused on Burmese? We are minorities in the States, and most of us are Christians and voting for Trump. Why not like China or Vietnamese? So maybe you're talking about, thank you for that $20. In the wake of the shootings that happened in Washington, D.C. yesterday, that killed one National Guard member, wounded another by an Afghan migrant, President Trump has come out and said, we're canceling visas for all of these third world countries that are sending people to the United States. And maybe he included Burma in that. I would not be very confident that President Trump could find Burma on a map. or has received much in the way of briefings about who's the good guys and who's the bad guys in Burma, why that conflict is taking place. This is a very long running conflict. It's been going on for more than 70 years. It's the longest running civil war in the world today. So I would just say that in answer to your question, the Trump administration doesn't understand what's going on in Burma, and if they did, they would not be saying anything negative against Burmese. Diva says, hey, a few weeks ago you mentioned that Tucker and Candace were accepting donations from bad actors like Hamas. Could you share the source for that? My mom is turning against Israel. Uh, no, they're being paid by. Uh, okay, so let me break this down. How they get their money? Qatar and Russia started political action committees, for lack of a better term, in the United States. They are not named in a way that would give you an idea that they are funded by Qatar and Russia, but these various different marketing firms and publicity firms and things like that, they are, without a doubt, it's been proven, funded by Russia and Qatar. Then those marketing firms hire Tucker Carlson or say, look, we will pay for you to go to Qatar and to report positively about Qatar, or we will pay for you to go to Russia and report positively about Russia. Um, they say the Armenia, the guy that he brought in from Armenia, that's Russian propaganda. Russia is trying to insert itself, or cause the Armenian government to collapse because they're leaning more toward the West. They're friendly to the United States. They're allowing U.S. troops into Armenia to train Armenian troops. And Russia doesn't like any of that. So Russia wants to cause chaos in Armenia. And so they paid there were rumors. Obviously, this is not going to be uh, very well documented, at least in places where we can find it. But the rumors are that Tucker Carlson was paid like $150,000 for doing that interview, and I would tend to believe something like that based on the rates for some of these things, and somebody with his reach, of course. So, I mean, you have to ask yourself: either is Tucker Carlson just insane? Why is he all of a sudden changing his tune? He used to be pro-Israel, he used to be pro-America, and he's changed his tune dramatically now. Same thing with Candace Owens. I mean, just off the chain. She's just like throwing the ball over the fence. So I found some proof of this process or this pipeline when I was researching Scott Ritter, because Scott Ritter just took an all expenses paid trip to Russia and went to had a bunch of interviews with RT, that's Russia Today, Russian state media, et cetera, met with a bunch of Russian officials and things like that, came back and has been just absolutely hog wild all over X, just attacking anybody who's not pro-Russia, including myself. And I couldn't even read you the last tweet that he addressed to me because it was so filled with profanities and insults and things that it wouldn't be fit for broadcast. Okay. Which to me just tells me he's a scared little boy that, when you feel like you got to talk that way, again, words mean things. And it tells me you don't have an argument when you just have to resort to cursing like a sailor. But anyway, in doing research on Scott Ritter, I found references to Scott Ritter in some of these marketing firms uh, where they have to report to the federal government when there's a foreign agent. It's called FARA reports, FARA. Uh, when they are employing Americans, these Americans, well, the not the Americans themselves, but the agencies, the marketing firms and stuff like that, have to register as a foreign agent in the United States. So they can't hide the fact that they're being funded by Qatar and Russia, and that's how you find out. So these guys had been using some of Scott Ritter's quotes and published articles and works and stuff like that in their marketing campaigns. They're probably paying Scott Ritter for that stuff. But what I found is that for sure, these agencies in the United States are funded by Qatar and Russia. Okay. All right. Next, what do you think about Trump making the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization? I think that's great. They should do that. That causes some issues with Turkey because Turkey supports the Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, Erdogan is straight up Muslim Brotherhood, I think. So that's a issue that may cause some sort of awkward moments. But yeah, we needed to do that. And hopefully that clears the way for us to strike at those people and sort of keep them hiding in their holes. Okay, next. Is it more than drugs? Is it the Islamic buildup also? I'm not sure what you mean. Oh, you mean in Venezuela? There certainly is a large buildup of Islamic terrorism or terrorist organizations in Venezuela. I've been, to Colombia and reported on that extensively. Hezbollah, Hamas, etc., IRGC, they've all got presence in Venezuela, and that is a big problem. And hopefully, if we do start bombing them, maybe we'll bomb a few of their places as well. Okay, next. Thank you for the $20 super sticker. Appreciate that. Thank you for the 25 Canadian pesos, Caro BLC. I say that with tongue in cheek, just because the Canadian dollar has dropped so much in value. It's almost like the Mexican peso now. Kevin McCarthy says, I don't believe the main reason for going after Maduro is necessarily about drugs. I think the main reason is ushering in a real elected president. Yeah, I totally agree. And I've done a lot of reporting on that in recent weeks. The real reason to get rid of Maduro is not cocaine. Obviously, there's a lot more cocaine coming out of Colombia than comes out of Venezuela. So why aren't we threatening Colombia? Well, because Maduro is a problem, and he's an illegitimate leader. He was not legitimately elected. So yeah, we should definitely be putting pressure on him to step down. And if a show of force is what's necessary, then great. I just think, make the show of force that we've put on in the Caribbean now is unprecedented. And it says that there's got to be more to it than just a show of force. But that's what all the experts are saying. Experts have been known to be wrong. We'll have to wait and see. All right, next. Does Turkey see advantage from being a NATO member? Yes, they do. They very much want to remain a NATO member, and that keeps sort of the some of the pressure against them at bay. Like I say, if we just kicked them out of NATO and made them a full-on adversary, it would be much worse for Turkey. So they don't want that to happen. Okay, next. Is there still Islam Iranian activity in Juarez, Mexico for many years? Likely so. Oscar Ramirez would be the source you'd want to go to on that. If you don't follow Oscar, you should definitely follow him. Okay, next. Do you think Israel has any plans, Ben Todd asks, to remove the nuclear threat at Pickaxe Mountain? Israel has any plans to remove the nuclear threat at Pickaxe Mountain? This is the new nuclear facility that Iran has started digging. I think I think that we have not seen the last of the conflict between Iran and Israel, but there's a lot of pressure on Israel right now not to go back to war against Iran, and Iran is saying if we go back to war again, we're going to fire 2,000 missiles at once at Israel, which is not likely because they don't have that many launchers. So that there is the Iranians are cleaning up, according to Institute for the Study of War. They are cleaning up the mess that was made by the bombings that took place in the 12-day war. They have not necessarily started repairing those facilities yet. They're just cleaning up the rubble, but they're cleaning up the rubble likely in anticipation of wanting to repair those facilities, and they have started digging a new one. So we'll just have to wait and see. And PC is sending another 4.99 pounds sterling. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate you. Spurn Gold says 300 plus Christians, including children, were recently kidnapped in Nigeria. Who's responsible and where are they taking them? They got some of those Christians back. I do track that. I talked to a Nigerian yesterday in Frankfurt, actually. And the, these Christians are being taken by Boko Haram. Many of them are females, and they're being forced into sex slavery or marriage to these Boko Haram fighters. This goes on all the time. It's been going on for many years. And I went to Nigeria and reported on this a few years ago. So who's responsible? Boko Haram and ISIS, and they're taking them to the areas that they control and are trying to force convert them to Islam. Okay, next. If the Palestinian Ben Todd asks, if the Palestinians are not a thing, why is no one calling them what they are? I've heard that they're actually Jordanians. Well, the calling them Palestinians is a political stunt, I guess. You're right. Historically, there was no state of Palestine, and the Palestinian people are actually, from Jordan. Jordanians are Hashemites and Bedouin. That's why they call it the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. They trace their lineage directly to Muhammad, and they're, like I said, about 60% of the people in Jordan are Palestinian people who came out of Israel and moved into Jordan. Okay, next. So Becky Snyder says, "What are your thoughts on the supposed CIA connection to the DC shooter?" Well, they say that he worked with U.S. Troops for about 10 years. At some points in there, he was working with U.S. Special Operations Forces. He may have worked with the CIA in Afghanistan. So I've seen people on X saying that means there's a non-zero chance that he was coached into these attacks. I don't know about that. I think Islam is enough to coach people into attacks like this. We don't need to find a CIA connection. But as I said, there are people on X who believe there's a non-zero chance that the CIA was somehow involved in that. I think that's a conspiracy theory, but usually the simplest answer is the right one. Okay, which side in Burma helped the U.S. and allies in World War II? That would have been the Hill Tribes people, the Karen, the Karenni, the Shan. Uh, those people were helping the United States during World War II, and we told them, if you help us, we'll give you your own country. And then when we left, we just turned it like, oh, the Burmese and the Shan and the Karen and the Karenni and all this, they're just all little brown people, so we'll just lump them all together and give it to them. But the Burmese were not all that helpful in World War II, and that's what caused the civil war that still rages today in Burma. So next question. 150K doesn't seem like enough to sell out like that. Is he well to do? Isn't he well to do without it? Well, he is, but he's got bills to pay. And, you start making money like that, it's hard to stop. Scott Ritter, Tom Bergen is asking if Scott Ritter is being paid by Russian. Again, I believe so. If for no other way, I mean, look, if Scott Ritter's not being paid by Russia, then he's a bigger idiot than I thought. Because to make the kind of claims that he's making on X on a daily basis that have been proven wrong again and again and again and again and again and again. I mean, I keep a file of stupid Scott Ritter quotes because all you have to do is wait about 6 months and then go back and look at some of the stuff he said 6 months ago, and he's just proven wrong over and over and over and over and over again. So either he's being paid to put out propaganda, knowing that it's untrue, or he's just stupider than I thought he was. But I believe he is being paid. Are drugs still a huge problem in Burma? Yes. A large portion of the illegal heroin that floods the globe comes out of two places, Burma and Afghanistan. So yeah, it is a big problem, and a lot of that is controlled by China and scamming too. There's huge scam centers in Burma. Some of them have been raided recently, but where a lot of those uh, emails that you get, the phone calls, the spam phone calls, contacts that some boobylicious woman contacts me about every day on Telegram or on Facebook or someplace and wants to be my friend. And look, I'm 56 years old and happily married for 30 plus years. There's no boobylicious 20-year-old in the world that really wants to be my friend on Facebook. So obviously, if you have that same problem, many of those are coming out of Burma, and they're just meant there's scam factories. Okay. Okay. Next, will the water shortage be an issue for Iran? Yes, it's a huge issue for Iran. They're having to move their capital. They're having to evacuate Tehran and move it in further south because they don't have any water. That's a huge problem. Absolutely massive. Next, Vosk, thank you for the 9.99. Thank you for being honest, forthright, and freely sharing the first national prayer breakfast in Armenia. Uh, Armenia is a base camp for Christ. Yes, it is. I am 100% with you on that one. And Wes says, just trying to learn, how are there more people in Gaza now compared to when the war started? Where did the extra people come from? It's called procreation. You know, they don't have a lot of television in Gaza, and so there's not a lot else to do. So they just kind of run around and get each other pregnant. And the average woman in Gaza has far more children than she ought to. And so that's where the growth came from. Here's the thing, you know, you hear about the deaths in Gaza. They don't talk a lot about the births in Gaza, but they say, you know, there's 65,000 people have died during this war in Gaza, and they act like all of those people were murdered by Israel. But if there had been no war in Gaza at all, there would have still been 47,000 people that would have died of natural causes over the last 2 years. So if there's indeed 65,000 people that have died in Gaza over the last 2 years, well, almost 50,000 of those would have died anyway, just of natural causes. And then people don't think about that. But there have been more than 65,000 people born in Gaza since the war started, and that's normal birth rate for them. Okay, next. Ephraim says, do you think the water crisis in Iran will still cause regime change? It could. It certainly is possible. It's putting a lot of pressure, let's say, on the regime in Tehran, and we've even seen in the last week or two some generals in the Iranian military coming out and denouncing the Khamenei and the current regime and declaring their loyalty to Reza Pahlavi, or whatever his name is, the sort of exiled son or grandson of the Shah, that a lot of people would like to see as the true leader of Iran. He'd be much friendlier to the West if that was the case. So we'll have to wait and see. Good question, though. Thank you very much for all your questions. The question, where does Scott Ritter bona fide resume come from? Serious experience. Well, he was a Marine. He was also a nuclear weapons inspector for the IAEA, and so there, you know, there's that. But the fact that he was in the military, you can find lots of people in the military that are stupid, and you can find lots of people who used to be in the military that are happy to sell out their country too. We've seen that with these ICE raids. We've seen a lot of military people that have come out just against the enforcement of U.S. law. So it's not surprising. And that doesn't give him a whole lot of extra credibility in Mike. It just means that he's fallen a lot further in my book. All right. Thank you very much for watching. Please go to chuckholton.com and subscribe over there. We're up to an hour and a half now on these lives, just because you guys keep asking so many questions, and I don't want to stop without answering your questions. So this format is here for you. It would be much easier for me to record these ahead of time and just upload them. But you guys obviously like the back and forth, the ability to ask me questions and make comments and get my take on things live. So we'll keep doing them. And thank you very much for watching. I appreciate all of you. And we will see you again, maybe tomorrow, likely Monday. Okay? Take care.